Well, welcome. Tonight, we're going to talk to one other person, one other special person, one person who not only has an opinion, but is willing to put the time and the energy in to make it happen, to help the town in a committee that a lot of people don't really understand. So why don't we start with an introduction? Bryan?
How you doing? Thanks, Al. Thank you for having me. I'm Bryan Cole. I'm running for planning board.
Now, as we always do, the first and last question is no surprise. Bryan, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Sure. So I'm a numbers guy, first and foremost, right? I have a doctorate in electrical engineering from Boston University. My undergrad was in electrical engineering and math at Tulane. My day job, I work with the Chicago Cubs as a research analyst in their baseball operations department. Numbers through and through, and I want to bring that same pragmatic, data-driven approach to the town's planning for the future. Second of all, as you know, I have a young family. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and so I want to bring a proactive approach to the planning board to make sure that Milford is the best it can be for that next generation. You've lived in Milford for what, 4 generations? I'm trying to think about the 5th and the 6th generations. And thirdly, I've been very active in town life. I'm the vice chair of the Cultural Council right now. I'm the chair of the Milford Democratic Town Committee. I've worked with the Milford Area Humanitarian Coalition. I was the chair of an elections working group. I was a consultant on the Town Meeting Study and Improvement Committee, so on and so on, all of which is to say that I have good working relationships with a lot of the people on the select board and the highway department and the town planner that I'm going to be working with, that I'm going to be working with if elected in this role.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question. If you answer in the wrong way, I'm going to boo you. If I say, what is a planning committee? And don't tell me a committee that plans.
Well, okay. Well, first of all, it's the planning board, Al. But I think what else can you say? But it is, the planning is the important part. It plans for Milford's future. Now, there's a short-term element to that. There's the short-term element, whether it's approving subdivision plans or site plans or special permits or things like that. But there's also the sort of long-term planning, the comprehensive plan, which I'm sure we'll get into more detail about, and setting up zoning bylaws to talk, to sort of adapt to changing needs and wants of the businesses and other developers.
But now, when you start thinking about the long term, people many, many decades ago set Milford up to succeed. You know, with the dual tax rate, with the way they did the zoning. What do you see the planning board's role, or the most important facet of the planning board's role, to charter Milford's future?
So I think for the biggest sort of impact on that sort of long-term vision is the comprehensive plan. For those of you who don't know, the comprehensive plan is a document that covers all of the entire, everything in Milford, basically from soup to nuts. It talks about the zoning, it talks about the traffic, it talks about open space and housing and all that sort of stuff. The current edition of the plan was written in 2003. Before that, it goes back to 1965, I think. And that's something that when I was talking with the town planner about this, he agreed that it's probably time to take another look at that, because a lot's changed since 2003 in the demographics of the town. There's also the zoning bylaws. As I mentioned off the top, the planning board is in charge of drafting and proposing new bylaws, as needed to adapt to changing conditions in the town. Most recently, the board added, town meeting approved, but the board suggested adding a business park zoning area in 2002, and an office residential. Think of the area around the highway, or excuse me, the hospital in 2010. So that's how we adapt. Those are examples of how we adapt the zoning to accommodate the long-term success of the town. And then thirdly, there's the preservation of resources. Every summer now, it seems we're under a water restriction, right? There's just, as the town grows more and more, resources and our infrastructure is starting to get stressed, whether that's the water supply or even just traffic on the roads. You talk about some of the traffic problems in this town, and people will tell you, look, there's just too many cars. This town was not developed. This town was not set up to handle this much traffic. So these are the sorts of issues, and these are the sorts of areas that we can have that long-term impact.
But now, take the traffic.
Please. Sorry.
What can you do about it? I mean, I grew up, there'd be 4 cars on Main Street, and we thought it was crowded.
Uh-huh.
Today, anybody driving through at 5 o'clock realizes how congested Milford can get.
Yeah, for sure. So, I really thought you were going to say I grew up before cars, and I was going to say, you're not that old, Al. Come on. So, if you look at the so if you look at the comprehensive plan from 2003, there's a whole chapter on traffic, and this is something that everybody complains about, and that everybody complained about even then. And the report identified a series of hot spots, including Dilla Street and Dilla and Purchase. And since that time, we haven't done anything on those intersections. And I think we have to start taking a look and seeing, and I think you and I have talked about this in the past, about looking at upgrading the signal at that intersection, just to time it better, because in the morning that gets backed up all the way onto Fountain Street as people are trying to turn onto Dilla, and in the evening, Dilla Street gets backed up sometimes all the way up to 85 in the Wendy's. If it's $50,000 or $60,000 to invest in a new signal there that can handle different timings at different times a day, I think that's something we should consider, not only for our quality of life, but also because it improves the air quality in the town. It makes it a better town to live in. And that's not even getting into the transportation terminals, the Amazon trucks that we've been fighting with.
But now, can you really do anything about an issue like the Amazon trucks?
Yeah. So I think, when I've been talking to people on the planning board now about Amazon, the feeling that I get is, well, they're already here. Once they're here, we can't do anything about them. We're not thrilled with this necessarily. If we'd had to do it over again, we'd do it differently. But, the horse is out of the barn in some sense. Still, I think there are steps we can take. I still want to see updates to the transportation terminal bylaw that's currently in the zoning bylaws, where those are allowed. At the moment, there's not a lot of space where you could put additional parking lots, for lack of a better word. But, if one of the big shopping centers, one of the big box stores goes out of business, well, now all of a sudden you have this whole lot. You could have a situation like you have at Quarry Square, where the owner of the plaza is just going to rent it out for more spaces. Or if Target, say, decides, online pickup is the future, and so online ordering is the future, and so we're going to shift away from the brick and mortar store model. Again, it's tough to sort of anticipate these things, but that's our job. That's our job as a planning board, is to say, where is the market going to go, and how can we make sure that this town is set up for success if that happens? And I think the other thing too we can do is to more strictly enforce the existing transportation terminal bylaws. I know that there are still 1 or 2 illegal terminals around town. And I think, well, all right. I think that there are a couple, let's call them questionable terminals then. And I think we have to take a good long look at whether everything that's there is actually supposed to be there.
Well, I mean, when you take and you say illegal, to me, if something's illegal, you enforce the law.
No, for sure. But like this happens all the time. Like whether it's the sign bylaw and or the balloons or even the parking downtown. Listen, but take the parking downtown for example. One of the problems that people have with the downtown revitalization is, oh well, there's not enough parking. Businesses are business owners are taking the spots right in front of their building and they're just parking their personal vehicles there all day, and they're not leaving them free for potential customers. Okay, well, there are signs posted every 20 feet downtown that says 2-hour parking, $25 fine. Let's enforce it and see if the problem goes away before we build new parking. So this is what I mean when I talk about sort of a pragmatic, data-driven approach. Yeah, okay, we can sit there and talk about how do we build more parking, but frankly, parking garages are ugly. If you're interested in a walkable downtown, nobody really wants to walk past a parking garage. It's not conducive to that. We should look at alternatives, such as enforcing the laws that are currently on the books and see how much the problem goes away.
You willing to talk about downtown?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about downtown. Like, so here's the thing.
How do we make downtown what it was? When I was a kid and I'd be, coming home from Stacy or the library, the big thing was to have 10 cents in my pocket because I could stop at Grant's and get a bag of popcorn. Yes, I am that old.
I know what popcorn is. Everything else in here is. I think I made the wrong choice here. All right, but so that aside, you're talking about a place where you can walk around, where you have things to do, where you have places to spend money, and you can just hang out with friends. Now, someday we'll be able to hang out with friends again. We'll ignore that part of it. But I do think, and this is where the Downtown Revitalization Committee has been, very good, bringing in the Rail Trail Flatbread Company as that sort of place where you can go and mingle and hang out. Now, downtown it's in an interesting situation because there's not a lot of vacant space, right? If there were a lot of empty buildings, we can say, or storefronts, we could say, oh, well, how do we bring in the types of businesses we want? Well, there's not really a ton of vacancy, which is good, right? We're bringing in the tax revenue there. The problem is that a lot of those businesses that are down there now are white collar insurance and real estate agents. Again, very good. Very appreciative of the money they bring into the town, but not the sort of place that you're going to send your kids after school with a dime to go get popcorn. Actually, they have popcorn in the bank. That's not the point. So, no, I think the planning board and the Downtown Revitalization Committee have to collaborate better than they have been doing to talk about mixed use housing downtown, to give that sort of built-in audience for new businesses, for new developments. I think I think we have to talk about parking and traffic and all of those things. And this is what one of the other things I wanted to stress in my campaign is that sort of collaboration. I feel like right now we on the planning board are very siloed off. We should be working with the highway department when they go on initiatives like the Complete Streets program or when they develop public transportation. You want to talk about fixing traffic. Well, if more people take public transportation, there's going to be fewer cars on the road. That's one way to do it. And then if more people are biking from the Complete Streets program, that's a couple more cars off the road. And so you make progress that way. We want to talk with the Conservation Commission. We want to work closely with them to sort of preserve the town's open space and our groundwater protection zones. We want to talk with the Cultural Council. The Cultural Council has been trying to push for more public art in spaces downtown. We've seen the economic development impact that has, and so I think that's something that that's an easy win for Milford to me. So all of these things, in a way, are sort of that sort of communication between departments is vital, I think, to making sure that we make the best possible future for Milford.
Now, it's been controversial for decades
Mm-hmm.
about allowing people to live on Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not all of Main Street, but the section that
Sure.
we always refer to as the heart of our Main Street.
Yeah, that CA zone. Yeah.
We'll get into that too, because I want to have you explain to people what these zones are. But I can't see, when you look at towns like Marlborough, Hudson, that have revitalized their downtown, they've built in people. It's like people who live upstairs will walk downstairs and buy some food for dinner, have dinner. I mean, is there any life above the first floor on Main Street?
I mean, there are a couple of apartments there now. Your friend and mine, John Teen, used to live down there. Yeah, so there's a couple there now, but there's not enough to support the sort of walk-in crowd, for lack of a better term, that you're talking about. But look, if you listen to the Downtown Revitalization Committee and Ron Pagnini's presentations on this, they're always talking about trying to attract that young professional audience and trying to that they want a sort of walkable town. Can you imagine living in this town, by the way, with no car? Like,
oh
yeah, I can't imagine. Like, if you lived downtown, how would you get to a grocery store? What's the closest one to there? Maybe Shaw's, maybe the Big Y.
Well, now it's Shaw's.
Okay.
Up in the Heights.
Yeah, probably. But how do you get there from there? I don't know that the bus line is an easy route to do that and stuff like that.
But even if it was, how do you carry your groceries unless you go like French style? When we used to live in France, we had to go shopping every day.
Yeah.
But you couldn't do that here. You couldn't carry 3-4 bags on the bus.
No. Well, I mean, maybe eventually. But the problem with the bus is that it only runs, clockwise around the town. If you got to sit through a scenic tour of Milford to get all the way back, I don't want to be carrying like shrimp for that trip or like any sort of fresh fish. But I think, so I think that's sort of how do we make the town more walkable, more attractive to a younger audience that's sort of next generation that's just starting out. How do we bring those guys in? And to me, that's what we should be looking at for downtown.
Well, you almost have to. I mean, people, this is terrible. I'll probably get hammered for it, but people your age, young families.
I'm not that young anymore.
Well, compared to me, you are. But you think about it. I mean, you've got a beautiful family, a small child. You're going to be up for walking around it in the afternoons. You're going to be up for taking her for ice cream. And if you could walk because you're living downtown, to me, you could do it more frequently. Now you got to get in the car, go through the car seat routine.
Yeah.
And we're just starting that now with a granddaughter of 2 years old.
She's okay. Yeah. So she's old enough to realize that she doesn't have to do this if she doesn't want to. Yeah. That age is not fun. But no, we are very excited about Birdies. They opened up over by the Quarry Square Plaza. What is that? Is that where Truffles used to be?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, but that's a great little ice cream store. It's not.
You're not going to walk there.
No, it's just not. And that's the type of stuff we gotta try and get better at, I think.
Now, what would you think you could propose to get more development, apartments downtown, people downtown?
Yeah.
Vibrance, just energy downtown.
Yeah. No, I think, but see, this is the thing. It's not going to come from just me, and it's not going to come just from the Downtown Revitalization Committee. This is a cornerstone, really, of our development as a town. And we need to make sure that whatever discussions we're having involve all of the stakeholders, not just the landlords, not just the business owners, the residents, the people who live on Main Street now, the people who live on the other end of town but would like to live on Main Street, high schoolers. We should be talking to more young people. Look, you had teenagers at one point. It's hard to tell what they want for dinner, let alone what they want to do in 5 years, where they want to live, what they want in a place to live. I think we need to get our younger people, younger than me even, involved in that conversation. You know, and I know I've heard a million times, oh, kids don't get involved, kids don't care about this stuff. Listen, I put on candidate forums the last couple of years at the high school. Those questions are always insightful and always incisive, and you know, I am always impressed at the knowledge and the insight shown by those kids.
Well, I think that is one of the best things I've seen. I'm not sure if it's the DTC that does it or who started including our teenagers, you know, to high school in the elections, but I think that is fantastic.
Yeah, no, it came out of the election working group we had in 2017, and I can say that I've crunched the numbers, and that the participation in our town elections from the high schoolers has doubled from 10% to like 20%. That sounds terrible, but it's still the best percentage of any age.
Wait a minute. We've been getting, sorry to interrupt, but I've been sitting there election night with 13% of the adults.
That's my point. Like, if you look like by age group, the 18-year-olds come out at a better rate than any age group under the age of 65. So,
and I think you're right, because you know, when I grew up, it was Ron Pagnini at the Music Nook.
Senior.
It was people, senior.
Yeah, okay.
It was people, you know, like Ron, that really you could tell loved the town and wanted the town to grow. And thank God, Ronnie Jr.
Yeah.
You know,
this one I know. Yeah.
You know, he's shown the same enthusiasm.
Yeah. But to me, it shouldn't all be on Ronnie or Josh Leoch or any of those guys. Like, this has to be something. This has to be an initiative from town hall. This is a place where we as a town have sort of dropped the ball that we have to get better at. Is sort of what can we how can we help these guys? What do they need? How can we work with them for something that's mutually beneficial? You know, that's all there is to it.
No, I agree with you, because you can't ask them to carry the heavy water.
Well, it's not their job.
He does have a day job.
No, it's not. And like I said, you got to make sure that you're representing every constituency, every stakeholder. That's where we in town hall, if I get elected in town hall, come in. That's the purpose of having a town hall is to do that sort of long range planning and to get
I think you can use the word we.
No. Never. No, I'm not going to assume. I'm still out there making phone calls. I'm still setting up meetings. I have signs. They're coming in. They're already in. I'm going to start putting them out once the snow melts. Don't take anything for granted. Dino told me run like I'm behind. I'm still going to do it.
Well, I look forward to seeing you election night at town hall.
Thanks.
Being the only candidate, I think you got a good chance.
Well, the only candidate so far, but we're still doing a fundraiser.
I'll be there for recipes.
Yes, we're going to be making Grandpa's pasta fagioli. It's going to be good.
Now, that's one of the things that, a little off topic, but you know, every candidate, I mean, it's gotten more and more expensive to run for any office. So any candidate I know of, except the rare one, has to raise funds.
Yep.
And it was always a bake sale or something at the Italian Vets or the Portuguese Club. What do you do in a pandemic? You just give up, or?
Kind of. So it's a different atmosphere for me than it was for because I don't have an opponent on the ballot right now, this is a different conversation than it would have been a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, my plan was to sort of make phone calls, personal appeals to friends I know, and then to sort of have this sort of cooking with the candidate event that I'm going to plug again. Why not? Since you've given me the opportunity.
Absolutely.
No, so this is the type of thing that you got to try to get creative. I've seen other candidates in other offices try to do, not in this town, but in other places, try to do sort of like making a drink and having, like, how do you make a specific cocktail or like a dance party or something like that. You still got to find a way to get out and get in front of people. And even if it's the same people that, the same sort of political junkies, that's sort of fine for a fundraiser, right? Because those are the people who are most likely to give you money. So again, this is something that I didn't, because I don't have an opponent at the moment, I've sort of backed off the fundraising. But yeah, you got to get creative and you got to just find a way to.
So how are you doing this? You're going to give me a recipe? How does that work?
So you have
to raise money.
Yes. So there are tickets. It's a Zoom call. Everybody loves a good Zoom call. I'm so sick of Zoom calls. I'm sorry, man. I saw, I think it was Kevin Rudden put something on his Facebook feed that was like a fake merit badge, like 100 Zoom calls. I sat there thinking, I've gone through 100 Zoom calls since January 1st. This is awful. Anyways, but no, we're setting up there's a Zoom link. $10 is the basic ticket, the Milford level, the Milfordian level. That gets you the Zoom link, basically. $25 is the Paisan level. That gets you a copy of the recipe and the Zoom link. And then $50 is the chef level. That gets you the Zoom link, the recipe, and I deliver the ingredients to your house. So you can follow along if you want. Incidentally, this is why I chose pasta fajoule, because it's cheap. And I need to turn a profit here. So,
well, it's a fundraiser. We all know.
Yeah, no.
Why we're donating.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, the response has been good. People are excited about it. I'm excited about it. It's going to be fun.
Now, when we think of planning for the future,
mm-hmm.
Where do you think the biggest bang for the buck would be? What would you change about our planning process to help Milford be better? I mean, we may get an A right now, but doesn't mean we don't try for an A+.
No, for sure. There's always room for improvement. And I think the biggest thing is the downtown, and the resource management. Like I said, people are always concerned about the water, both quantity and quality, to be honest. And until we hear back from the DPU, there's only so much we can do about that. But as we move forward with these developments, whatever they are, it's something we have to look out for. What is our, excess capacity at the water company? How close are we to running up against that? That's a big driver. If the water is gone, it doesn't matter how nice the downtown looks.
But now when you talk about water, I remember coming up Silver Hill to get home and seeing a sign that said we're in a water conservation stage, whatever.
Uh-huh.
And it was February.
Yeah.
It said no watering your lawns.
Yep.
Brian, I have to admit, I've never watered my lawn in February.
Mm-hmm.
But it scared me that we're already in a conservation and it's not even spring.
Yeah. No, and I think that's, we've talked about the 40B developments, and I'm sure we'll get into those later. This is why we have to be careful. We have to pay attention to that distinction between unfriendly and friendly developments. If you dump 200, 300 units at a time on us, where's that water going to come from? There's only so much, digging we can do here. There's only so much of the water we can take out of the Charles by state statute, right? So we have to be very smart about that. And it's a limiting factor for sure.
But does the planning board, do Milfordians, does anybody really have an option? I mean, 40B, my understanding, and it may be limited, is that it's set up to encourage low income housing or to help people who don't meet the median.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we complain and we threaten to ask for changes, we have to go to the 40B commission.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work?
So here's what I'll say here. First of all, affordable housing is important, right? We need to make sure that our seniors who have lived here their whole lives, that they can stay in the town they love. And we need to make sure that our young families that are just starting out, that they have a place to start off, like a first apartment or whatever it is. Again, you want to encourage people to stay here, especially now, by the way, that so many people are working remotely. If you can live anywhere, live where you have family. So that's something we should be considering as well. As far as the affordable housing is something that, again, I think the town has missed an opportunity here. If you look at that comprehensive plan, they talked about how the town is 400-ish units in the whole, and this is back in 2003. And that if we did, and the consequences of inaction were that we would open ourselves up to unfriendly developments that would use up our limited stock of available industrial land. And lo and behold, what's happened? It's 20 years later, basically, we've taken no action. We've opened ourselves up to unfriendly developments. There's 3 or 4 of them. And by unfriendly, of course, I mean, 200 or 300 units at a time. As we talked about, this is going to be a stress on our resources, on our water, on our sewer. You remember the backup a couple of years ago in the downtown businesses? You want to worry about how to help out those downtown businesses. I don't want to be running a salon and have feces coming in the sinks. No, my wife goes to that salon. Like, I felt bad. Like, this isn't something that she should have to deal with. But so there's a difference between the unfriendly developments and the friendly developments. Something that we as a town come up with help from the state, some sort of housing production plan. That process exists. The state wants towns to be smart about how they build these houses. We can, and I feel like we should, go after one of these housing production plans and start putting one together. Because if not, like I said, we're opening ourselves up for these giant complexes, and I think the town's going to struggle with them.
Yeah, I don't understand, because again, I'm not sure I have the whole story, but I understand that one of the developments is putting in their own sewer treatment plant.
Okay. It's better than nothing, but they don't have their own water.
But if they put in their own, and then the housing development people go away in 20 years,
mm-hmm.
Who's going to be, when the work has to be done, because nothing lasts forever.
Sure.
I sit there and say, they're going to come back to the town.
Yep.
And say, okay, now we need to have it renovated.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go back to the homeowners.
No.
They won't have enough money to do it.
Well, I mean, it depends, the thing about the 40B developments is that only a certain number of those units have to be affordable, right? I can't remember if it's 20 or 25. I think it's 25, but the other 75% can, might be able to pick up the slack in that instance. Certainly, though, you're right. We have to think about how is this treatment plant going to interact with our treatment plants? If this is on wetlands or something like that, how do we ensure that we protect our town's open space? How do we ensure that there's no negative impacts on it? As best we can. And this is why it's important that we try to be, again, proactive about these developments rather than just lay back and hope for the best when someone comes in.
Now, there's always a debate about encouraging new business to come in versus doing more housing.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, more housing, you get more affordable housing, you help residents. Business, everybody beats up on, well, more traffic, more this, more. What's your opinion? How do you draw the balance?
Yeah, no, I think it's about sort of resource allocations. There's always that sort of, as you mentioned, that tension between growth and infrastructure concerns. But to me, one thing that I want to look at, that I'm looking at as I start to study this more seriously, is sort of dollars or value per acre. How much does a given business, a given development sort of bring in for its size? Something like Target, on Fortune Boulevard, that's assessed at something like $11 million, which sounds good until you realize that with all the parking and everything, it's on 16 acres of land. Now compare that to the Opera Building downtown, where the Morin studio is. That's valued around $600,000, but it's only on a quarter acre of land, so it's a lot more efficient, so to speak. So that sort of efficiency trade-off is something that I really think we should be looking at as we try to come up with these developments. And again, why it's so important to maximize downtown, maximize what we're getting out of downtown.
But you start looking and you say, we have a unique dual tax rate in Milford. Your opinion?
Are you asking me if we should get rid of the dual tax rate?
I'm just asking, should we have a dual tax rate? Should it be larger, smaller?
Yes. One thing, I mean, this is not something that's in the purview of the planning board. I think that the dual tax rate is a valuable tool for Milford. You guys on the FinCom and the town treasurer and everybody have done a good job sort of keeping the town books clean, for lack of a better word. I think, I don't think that dual tax rate can or should go away. What I would like to see the town look at more seriously, and again, this is not in the purview of the planning board, I know this, is the small commercial exemption for properties with only a handful of employees and less than, I think, $1 million worth of revenue. You give them a little bit of a tax break, and it brings their taxes more in line with the residential rate. That's something that can help those small businesses, those real little guys, who might otherwise suffer from the dual tax rate.
Now, ZBA, planning board, people don't understand. Is there a difference, or?
Yeah. So this is something I this is something I had to look up too. So the basic way to understand it is the planning board, as we talked about, it sets up the comprehensive plan. It does the sort of zoning boundaries and the usage. It does the sort of subdivision plans and the permit process. And then on the other hand, you have the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the key word there is appeals. When the planning board rejects potential land usage, when the building inspector says, no, you can't use property X for use Y, then the owner can go to the Zoning Board of Appeals, say that, the restrictions in place now create a hardship for me. I can't use my property the way I want to. And if there's a real, and the ZBA decides if there's a real hardship, and if so, they kick it back to the planning board, who usually they will try to have some back and forth and work with within the constraints if there is a real hardship.
Is there any situation where you go directly to the Zoning Board of Appeals?
I think so. I'm going to say the 40B units, just because that those are by their nature, so sort of an appeal, that process more or less goes through the ZBA rather than the planning board, just because by their definition, those are sort of structures that don't comply with the existing land usage. So
now you talk about CA, RC, LMNOP. Can you describe in layman's terms? So you remember you're talking to an old man. Just explain to me in basic English, what zones do we have and why do we have them?
Right. So there are 12 zones total. There are 4 different residential zones, from like a general residential all the way out to a rural residential. There are 3 industrial zones, highway, central, and sort of a neighborhood, and neighborhood one, and then a commercial zones, which are all the way from downtown, again out towards the highways. We talked a little bit about the business park, which is sort of where Fortune Boulevard and a Via, no, that's not their name. Dito, the chemical place on Fortune Boulevard off to the right.
Avicia.
Thank you.
It's Nitto. You're thinking, it's confusing because they got bought by a Japanese company.
Yeah,
But it's still a decent.
I couldn't remember what the letters in the middle were.
Yeah.
But anyways, the idea being that you would have sort of business parks and sort of like the area around waters. That's sort of the business park zone. Then you have the office residential zone, like we talked about before, the area around the hospital, a large sort of office building, and then houses around it. And the reason for these different distinctions is that you're allowed to do different things in these different areas. The lot sizes, the minimum size for like a house or whatever can be different in different places. So in RD, in the rural zones, RC and RD, you're allowed to keep animals, the infamous chickens. As you move into, I looked at the ZBA agenda for tomorrow or whenever the meeting is, and there's chickens on it again, and I had to laugh. I think
we have the most expensive chickens I've ever heard of. In 25 minutes, we went through $100 million of spending.
Yeah.
And then 2.5 hours later, we're still debating 4 chickens.
No, and I think this is, so I think, but this brings up a point though, right? This is a use of where the planning board can address these issues in advance. Not the chickens per se. Compare what comes out of the town meeting or what goes into the town meeting warrant from the planning board in Milford to what goes into the town meeting warrant from the planning board in Medway or Hopkinton or whatever. If you look at those other towns, there's a lot more. We're going to talk about smog. We're going to talk about light pollution. We're going to talk about this and that. And it's trying to get ahead of these issues before they become problems. And I don't think that we in Milford, do that. I think we should.
Well, we had a debate a while ago when the big sign went up on Route 140 for a medical establishment.
Uh-huh.
And the whole debate came up about signs and what you can have.
Yeah. Yeah,
But that never went anywhere.
Yeah. I think these debates have to go somewhere. And I think it has to be more than just the signs. I think we're spending a lot of time on some of the little things, but not focusing on the issues that, really matter to really affect people's quality of life, like the traffic, like our open space. This is something that we talked about in the comprehensive plan about ahead of the Charles Greenway. Now, most of this is all town-owned land, but there really hasn't been a lot of action on it. I talked to a friend when I was making some phone calls when I was telling people I was running. He's like, I have a second house out in Wareham, and they have like dirt bike trails, and you can ride or take your bike from one end of town to the other just on all these trails. And you can't do that in Milford. And it's not for lack of space. Now, and so the question of, do we want to keep our open spaces this very passive recreation, or do we want something more active? Somewhere between, do we want more areas between the bike trail and the town forest, right? So this is the type of discussion that I want to have. And again, this is about making the town the best it can be for our kids, for their kids, whatever.
Well, it's come up a couple times. If you remember when the bike trail first came out, there was a lot of resistance of how much we're going to spend on a bike trail. Yet now I'd say it's probably one of the most popular.
Oh, for sure.
Areas.
Like if you took a referendum on or got like an approval rating for the bike trail, it'd be through the roof. Like nobody would, these things are sort of a slam dunk. I think that these sort of recreation opportunities are sorely needed. I have friends working on that. We're working on that sort of dog park proposal. We did a survey, and listen, I understand that it's there's some sampling bias here and all that, but of the people who responded to the survey, 2/3 of them said, I don't have a place to walk my dog safely, right? Especially now in the winter when the sidewalks are all covered in snow and people are walking in the street just because they have to. That sort of recreation opportunity, I think, is something that we as a town can and should do wherever we can within budgetary reasons, of course.
Well, no, everything is within budgetary reasons. But when Lauren first talked about it,
Mm-hmm.
what hit me was I remember living in Paris, and
Yeah.
everybody talks about how the Parisians
Mhm.
always walk looking down.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason. There's nowhere to walk the dogs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So if you don't look down,
Yeah.
you could end up with a surprise coating
Mhm.
your feet.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of a dog park, to me, whether I'm going to walk my dog there or not,
Mm-hmm.
one, it's good for people who have dogs,
Mm-hmm.
but I like the idea because it's good for people who don't have dogs.
Yeah, like we have tried to take our dog Max down to the bike trail, and God bless him, but he's dumb as a bag of hammers. And like every time a bike goes past, he loses his mind. That's not great for anybody. That's not good for anybody's enjoyment. You got to have a sort of a separate space, to me. And I'm hopeful that it would encourage people to, if you limit it to people who only get dog licenses, well, that would encourage more people
To get dog licenses.
Yeah, talk to the town clerk. Amy has huge problems with that for sure.
Well, I mean, $6.
I think it's more about having a step to do. Like the town census is free, but people don't return the census. That's not because it's expensive. It's because they don't see the need or they don't get anything out of it.
Well, I think you're right that if I needed to have a tag to get into the park,
Mm-hmm.
$6 isn't going to stop me. I'll do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Okay.
Now, open space.
Mm-hmm.
We have bought over the years land,
Mm-hmm.
Down on Dilla Street, Louisa Lake, and I don't think we've ever heard anybody. It made sense to buy it.
Yeah.
Because for sure we've learned that once it's gone, you ain't ever getting it back.
No, as my friend's father ran for city council out in Kansas somewhere, and they have that debate all the time. And the standard rebuttal is, well, they're not making any more land. We better not sell it all. I think, and we saw this from the select board a couple of years ago when there was a lot of land that turned out to be in the groundwater protection zone that they were looking at selling. And unfortunately, we saved that. We put it under the Conservation Commission. And it's just a question of is it enough to conserve it, or do we want to try and get some use out of it? You ever been to the trails in, what is it, Dedham, the Blue Hills Reservation?
No.
We just went there with a friend, with a couple of friends from college over Christmas break. It was cold, obviously, but listen, there's only so much you can do these days that where you can get together with people, and it's a outdoor activity, and it's fun with kids, and it's not super challenging, and it's a way to see to appreciate the beauty of nature. And if you go to the right spots, there's a good view of the skyline of Austin, but that's neither here nor there. The point being that I think we have to start thinking seriously about the open space we have, the other town properties that sort of fit that description that we want to conserve, and how, if at all, do we want to actually use them?
Well, I think it's key because if you think about, again, probably a little bit before your time, I remember driving down to the dump.
Uh-huh.
Now it's called Plains Park.
Uh-huh.
And obviously you couldn't have an open dump like we did when we first grew up in Milford.
Mm-hmm.
But that whole area now really serves well, except for the geese.
Geese are the worst. Sorry.
Geese are the worst.
Oh.
But, the kids down there now, you've got lacrosse, you've got soccer, baseball.
They have that the jack-o'-lantern thing at that's where they have that every year. Do you remember this? The who puts that on? Is that Mike Shane?
I don't know.
I can't remember. I feel like he's involved in it somehow. He's involved in
The
that.
biggest thing for me was even the 4th of July down there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great.
I tried once saying, okay, let me go into Boston and see the big fireworks. And
I lived in Boston and I never went down to the Esplanade. That's nuts.
But there's something about, and I know it makes me look old and corny, but walking around and having John Accavelli or Keith Gattazzi sneak me a hot dog from the Lions trailer.
Yeah.
before my wife sees me eating something like a hot dog and yells at me, or walking around and seeing my neighbors.
Yeah.
And candidly, there's part of me that will always support the fireworks because there's a lot of people in Milford that can't afford to go spend $500 to go see the fireworks.
Yeah. And look, those events, whether it's the Portuguese picnic, whether it's the Celebrate Milford Days, those all build community camaraderie. Sounds terrible, but let's go with that. That's sort of pride in your community, and I think that's why the Cultural Council, the Mass Cultural Council, puts out these grants to sort of put on these events. I think they're great for the town, and I do. I wish we had more of them.
What is your opinion, off subject, on TIFs?
Yes. All right. Back on subject, really.
Okay.
Right. We are supposed to be. So the planning board does not. The planning board has I would say, a minor role to play in the TIFs. The select board is the one that actually will go out and negotiate with the businesses once they come forward. The town meeting, obviously, is the group that will actually approve them, right? That will actually decide to approve or disapprove them. But that doesn't mean, as I think we've shown, that doesn't mean that that planning board does not have a role to play in economic development. We've talked about different collaborations and different ways that we can affect the zoning to meet the needs of businesses, meet the needs of the community to encourage the sort of the types of businesses that we want and that will be good for the long-term health of Milford. So TIFs are a tool, but they're not the only tool.
Describe a TIF. What is a TIF?
What is tax incentive financing? Is that what the acronym is? Okay. So for the viewing audience at home, the TIFs are a percentage that is taken off the sort of assessed value of a property that reduces a business's tax burden. Now, typically what will happen is the TIF will sort of fade over time with the ones that we talked about last January? That feels like forever ago. Oh, God. All right. Last January then with Interactions and the other company that actually stayed here.
Yes, the one from Franklin that didn't come.
Rentschler. That's
Rentschler. Yep.
Yes. So they started off at an incentive of close to 100%. So nearly all of the entire bill was wiped out at the beginning, and by year 15, I believe it is, of the TIF, they're back paying essentially 100% of their taxes again. Now, with the TIF, there are always conditions. You have to stay in town, for instance, and things like that. You'll witness the glass factory, St. Gobain, Ardagh, whatever the actual name was at the end there, who moved, and once you move, once you close the doors, you still have to go back to paying the taxes.
Well, I think the biggest thing is that a lot of times people don't understand that the TIF is only on new development.
Yeah.
If I have a building and I'm paying $100 today, and I get a TIF because I'm going to expand it to 150, I'm going to make a bigger building. The $100 I was paying, I don't get anything off that.
Right. It's only off the extra 50.
The extra 50. And then if I leave town, like we had an appliance company who had very nice TIF. And 3 years later, they got up and moved to Florida.
Yep.
Well, the good news is they can't take the building with them.
That's true. But, you look at the glass company again, and this is a case where they built this specialty facility with extremely specialized equipment. Now, I don't know if I believe the rumors that they fused all of the machines shut with just left glass in them so that they would be useless to whoever took the building next. But regardless, when once they moved away, the town has this building on its hands, and the owner, the people that came to the planning board to purchase it said, look, there's not the demand for manufacturing in Milford, so we want to turn it into a warehouse. So that's a risk that we have to weigh as well.
But we still get paid. If I was doing $100,
Mm-hmm.
I add on to my building, and it's valued at $150 of taxes per year.
Yeah.
I'm getting a TIF, so I'm only paying $100 for 5-10 years.
Mm-hmm.
If 3 years into it I leave,
mm-hmm.
whoever owns the building now is going to be paying $150.
Yep.
Because they lose their TIF.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm comfortable. I don't know if you are, but I'm comfortable with TIFs as long as you're building something.
Mm-hmm. No, I think, yeah, again, I don't think that this is really within the scope of the planning board, but then it's never stopped us in the rest of this conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I understand the logic there for sure.
We're getting near the end.
Mm-hmm.
Bryan, I'm from Milford.
Mm-hmm.
Why should I vote for you?
Do you count me as from Milford, Al?
From Milford, yes. Are you asking, are you defined as a Milfordian?
Ah, I see. I mean, so here's the thing. I asked that sort of in jest, but I think a lot of people are saying, well, if you haven't lived here for 30 years or whatever, you're not from Milford. You can't consider yourself from Milford. And I want to push back against that. Like my goal in this campaign is to be a voice for everybody who lives here. Whether you've lived in town for 45 years or 45 minutes, I think everyone should get the same treatment from town hall. I want to get out there and sort of help people out. I have the Mexican place I go to all the time. They're in front of the select board tonight trying to get a liquor license. This was one that came through town meeting a while ago. And just sort of like stalled at the state house level. And I asked them. That's what they told me. I said, I'll nudge Brian Murray. Like,
one thing to keep in mind.
Sure.
I was born in Milford.
Yes.
I didn't have a choice.
Sure.
When my parents came to Milford, I was born in the Milford Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
I hold in high regards people who weren't born in Milford, who decided to move their family to Milford because they had a choice. We joke about being a Milfordian means you got to be here 3 generations and live within 2 miles of your mother.
Yep.
But it's a joke. Realistically, people who decided to bring their family to Milford, that it means a lot because they made a fundamental choice to come here. And I hope they stay.
Yeah. Listen, I have a young family and a recent refinanced mortgage. I'm here for the long haul, and I want to make this town the best it can be for them and for myself, selfishly. So.
And it's funny because my darling bride, who's been in Milford now 30 years, says she's not a Milfordian.
No.
Yet she's the one that checks the Milford Daily News every night. She's the one that knows everything going on. I just hope people understand we joke about being a Milfordian, but boy, we value the people who have moved here.
Well, I appreciate that.
And as always, I value people like you who not only have an opinion, but are willing to put the blood and the sweat into making it happen.
Well,
thank you again to our 6 loyal viewers. As always, may God bless. May tomorrow be a better day than last night. I always say I'll never ask you to vote for any specific candidate. In this case, I can ask you to vote for Bryan.
Oh, I'm going to go put that endorsement on my webpage. You watch.
People may say you got no man endorsing you. It's a negative. But I think it's a great thing. And I look forward to having you on the planning board.
Thanks, Al. I look forward to working with you.
Good night, all.
Not too long since I've been home. Been running all my life